Hello, good morning. Edgardo Sambu here once again. And this time we are now on episode number 46. And the topic for today would be circumcision during the time of Abraham in the Old Testament, and why it has to be done on the eighth day after the birth of the male child. Many Bible reading Christians are asking if science has anything to do with the Bible. Can science prove that what are written in the Bible are true, or just a figment of the imagination? If science could prove that what are written in the Bible are true, this will be a strong force that would motivate people to read the Bible, since they would say that if science believes that the Bible is true, then we, as ordinary persons, have no reasons not to believe the Bible. In determining that if the Bible is true, we can resort to logic, Bible verses, science, medicine, and so forth, since this will be our standards of truth. In this track, I am going to use science and Bible verses to prove that what were written in the Bible are true and correct. The topic for today is circumcision. In the book of Genesis, chapter 17, verses 9 to 14, it states, "Then God said to Abraham, As for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you, the covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you. For the generations to come, every male among you who is 8 days old must be circumcised, including those born in your household or bought with money from a foreigner, those who are not your offspring, whether born in your household or bought with your money, they must be circumcised. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant." One of the covenants that God made with Abraham was the circumcision of every male, and this circumcision has to be done on the 8th day after the child's birth. Abraham obeyed this directive from God, not even understanding why it has to be done on the 8th day after the birth of the child. Abraham could have asked God, why on the 8th day? Why not on the 7th day, or the 5th day, or the 2nd day? People during those times could not find any explanation why on the 8th day, because science and medicine knowledge during those times were still very primitive. So Abraham obeyed this order, not even knowing the reasons behind it, because God knows that even though he explained this to Abraham, Abraham will never understand his explanations anyway, because Abraham does not know anything about medicine and science during those times. But in our modern times, science and medicine had found the reasons why God had said that the circumcision had to be done on the eighth day. This incident happened with the greatest possibility way back 1450 below 1410 before Christ. Now let me tell you the reasons behind it as supported by science and medicine. According to the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, chapter 17, verse 12, circumcision of newborn males was to be performed on the eighth day after birth. Why the eighth day? In 1935, a certain Professor H. Dam proposed the name vitamin K for the factor in foods, which help prevent hemorrhaging in baby chicks. We now know that vitamin K is responsible for the production of prothrombin by the liver. If vitamin K is deficient, there will be a prothrombin deficiency and hemorrhaging. This is a condition in which a person may bleed too much and cannot stop the flow of blood. This hemorrhaging may occur since both vitamin K and prothrombin are necessary for proper blood clotting. Oddly enough, it is only on the 5th through the 7th days of the newborn's male's life that vitamin K begins to be produced. This vitamin K is normally produced by bacterial action in the intestinal tract, and it is only on day 8 that the percentage of prothrombin climbs above 100% of normal. The only day in the entire life of the newborn that the blood clotting element prothrombin is that high is day 8. The best day for surgical procedure like circumcision is therefore day 8. Perhaps you will ask me, what happens during circumcision? Circumcision is the cutting of the foreskin at the head of the penis of a male and then suturing it to expose the head of the penis permanently. As you would know, during the time of Abraham, there were no antibiotics yet, and there were no suturing or sewing of the skin together yet. So when the foreskin of the penis was cut, blood will start to flow. And the only way for this blood to stop flowing is for the blood to coagulate. Coagulate means blood clotting. But incidentally, a child who is 7 days old does not have the capability to develop coagulation, and thereby the blood will not stop flowing out of the child's body, causing the child to be in a state of hemorrhage. And this hemorrhage is a condition in which a person bleeds too much and cannot stop the flow of blood. And this hemorrhage will result in the child's death. But on the 8th day, the combination of vitamin K and prothrombin will cause the blood to coagulate, and thereby the blood will cease to flow. But perhaps you will ask me again that during our present times, doctors are performing circumcision on a child even though right after birth. Why is this so? In our modern times, medicine is now so advanced that we now have antibiotics and the sewing or suturing of the skin after the operation, preventing the continuous flow of blood. God did not explain this to Abraham since Abraham will not understand it anyway. This will prove that science and medicine had proven that the verse in Genesis 17, verse 12, has a scientific and medical explanation which had been discovered only on our present times. Excuse me. Now, is circumcision still being enforced by God in our present time? Please take note that this covenant between God and Abraham was only applicable to the Israelites, not to the Gentiles. We Filipinos and other nationalities are Gentiles converted into Christianity. We are not covered under this covenant. In the book of Galatians chapter 5 verse 6, it states, "For in Christ Jesus neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any value at all. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love." In the Christian dispensation, in which the priesthood is now under Christ, being circumcised is no longer important to Christ. You can be a Christian whether you are circumcised or uncircumcised. We are no longer under this covenant between God and the Israelites. The reason why we are still under the practice of circumcision is not because we are still under the covenant, but we are undergoing circumcision for hygienic purposes. Let me expound more on this topic, circumcision during the Old Testament. During the Old Testament, during the time of Abraham, God had made a covenant between him and Abraham and the descendants of Abraham. And God told Abraham that all male child who was born during those times and 8 days old has to be circumcised. And perhaps you know what circumcision is. Now, Abraham obeyed this commandment of God without even understanding the reason why God said it has to be done on the 8th day after the birth of the child. Why 8th day? Even though God would explain this to Abraham, Abraham would not be able to understand it because his knowledge about medicine and science during those times were still very primitive. Abraham does not know anything about vitamin K. Abraham does not know anything about prothrombin being produced by bacterial action in the intestinal tract. Abraham does not know anything about prothrombin being produced by the liver. So, how can Abraham understand the explanation of God that a male child, shall be circumcised on the 8th day after the birth of the child? So Abraham has or could not do anything but just obey the law of God. That is to circumcise the male child on the 8th day, not on the 7th, not on the 6th, not on the 5th, but it has to be on the 8th day. The question is, why on the 8th day? Because according to science now, modern science and modern medicines now, these brands of knowledge, science and medicine, had found out that on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 7th day after the child's birth, the child has no sufficient vitamin K and no sufficient prothrombin. As you would know, vitamin K together with prothrombin would cause blood coagulation. Blood coagulation is the hardening of the blood on top of the skin when you are wounded or when your skin is cut. And this vitamin K is being produced by the liver. Oh, excuse me, I made a mistake. And this prothrombin is being produced by the liver, and vitamin K is being produced by the intestinal tract. Now these two, prothrombin and vitamin K, will join itself together, and this will prevent the blood to freely flow from the wound coming from the cut skin. The blood will start to harden and the blood will stop flowing from the wound. But this could only be done on the 8th day after the child's birth, because prothrombin and vitamin K is only sufficient on the 8th day, not on the 7th, the 6th, the 5th, or the 4th day after birth, but on the 8th day. That was why God said that Abraham, all male child shall be circumcised on the 8th day after birth, because God knows that on the 8th day the blood could perform the ability to coagulate. Coagulate means the blood will harden the flow of the blood upon the cutting of the skin. As you would know, on circumcision, the foreskin will be cut, and during the times of Abraham, there was no antibiotic yet, no suturing of the skin. Suturing means in which the skin will be sewn together by means of needle and thread. During those times, there were no needle and thread yet to suture the skin, and there were no antibiotics yet. So if the blood will not stop flowing, then it is very certain that the child will hemorrhage, because the blood will continue to flow, and this will be the cause of the death of the child. So my fellow Bible-believing Christians, it is very clear from my explanation why God had told Abraham that his descendants, male descendants, must be circumcised only on the 8th day forward, not below the 8th day after the birth of the child, because this has something to do with prothrombin being produced by the liver and with vitamin K being produced by bacterial actions in the intestinal tract. So this question or this verse had been a question for so many Bible-believing Christians. They kept on asking the question, why did God ordered Abraham to circumcise on the eighth day? Now, my fellow Bible-believing Christians, you now know why on the eighth day. Because it is only during our times that science and medicine had discovered vitamin K and prothrombin. But during the times of Abraham, their knowledge about medicine and science were so primitive. That's why Abraham just obeyed God without even asking the question, why God did you instructed me to do the circumcision on the eighth day? I think this blog is very clear that that was the reason why God ordered Abraham that all male child should be circumcised on the eighth day onward, not before the eighth day. So I would say to my fellow Bible-believing Christians, if you would like to view my other videos starting from episode 1 to episode 46, just go to YouTube, then under the word search, type my name Edgardo Sambo, and YouTube will give you all the episodes from 1 to 46 for your own personal viewing. And please don't forget to ring the notification bell. And if you are in the mood, please subscribe to my blog so that I could continue on doing my preaching through this blog. I would say bye-bye for now, and I would be back 2 or 3 weeks from now, and I will discuss episode number 47. Please be with me, and may God bless us all. Thank you very, very much.